If I asked you what a strong core like, chances are you'll picture a shredded six-pack. But there's actually one of the biggest misconceptions in fitness, because looking strong and having a strong core are two totally different things. Your core isn't just there to look impressive. It's there to stabilize your body, protect your spine, and generate and transfer force. And having a strong core is one of the most overlooked longevity hacks. Today, I'll show you how to get a core that actually performs with some of the best exercises for real-world strength and stability. So if you're ready, let's gonna have some fun. Starting with what is probably the weakest link in almost every single person's core musculature, which are your hip flexors, responsible for flexing your hips. And I want you to try this out with me right now if you can, because this is gonna instantly show you how weak your hip flexors actually are. Just sit down, fully upright in your upper body, and all you need to do is elevate your extended leg and hold it as long as you can. Without exaggeration, this might be one of the simplest looking yet hardest exercises for people to go through. Open your legs, keep them fully extended, elevate one leg, extend your toes, and then move into external rotation in your hips by turning your knee outwards, and then pull your leg out as far as you can and start extending your back. And if you cannot hold this for 20 seconds at least without starting to cramp, then you definitely need to work on this a lot more. Starting with classic repetitions, just elevating and placing it down again, switching legs, and working your way up to being able to hold this statically without having any problems. And one way to make this a lot easier while you're progressing is to lean back in your upper body, making this a lot more accessible, and over time, as you progress, elevate your upper body and extend your back more and more. And moving past this into a little bit more advanced territory, from a hanging position and a hollow body hold, we will start with the easiest variation, pulling in our knees, and working our way up to being able to hold them or raise them extended, holding statically, and progressing from there to a toes to the bar raise, of course in a controlled fashion. And you can also work your way through those on a dip bar, or if you do not have access to a dip bar, simply placing two chairs next to each other and going through the same progression will help you connect your hip flexors to your abdominal musculature. Which leads us to a more dynamic exercise that now includes a lot more core musculature, the extension out of a squatting position and the switch from left to right, first forward with a long range of motion, now including some quad strength of course for extending our leg, but most importantly connecting hip flexors to our abdominal musculature, and now also requiring a lot more stabilization from our body and the tiniest bit of shift in our spinal musculature as well, and then progressing in difficulty by crossing over behind our other leg and lowering down as close to the floor as we can before we extend once more and then shift, now having a lot of lateral flexion from our spine, which means that we include a lot more oblique musculature, or the side of our core, just like so. With both of these exercises having an immense mobility benefit as well, because we're working from a deep squat or a resting squat position. And before we get into what is probably one of my favorite core exercises, let's cover an easy static plank progression first. Level 1, assisted plank, moving into spinal flexion, pushing our shoulders forward, and then moving into complete shoulder abduction, or pulling our scapula apart, progressing to an unassisted position, elevating our knees and actively flexing our quads to extend our legs, pushing our shoulders a little bit forward more, being mindful of keeping that flexion in our spine for maximum engagement of our anterior chain musculature. Opening up our legs a little bit wider than shoulder width apart, adding massive amounts of stabilization from our core by simply removing one of our hands. Of course, spinal flexion and lengthened shoulder position, and then increasing stabilization by elevating one leg, now requiring pretty much every single core muscle and muscle fiber in our body to stabilize this position. And next to that, we can work on elongating our body, moving into an ever longer position, requiring more and more engagement from our entire body and a lot of engagement from our abdominals to keep our spine somewhat flexed. Of course, not forgetting about the more oblique dominant plank positions, which moves from a classic assisted side plank to an unassisted one, on our elbows, and over time, as we're also strengthening our shoulders and our arms, extending our arm, and we are still actively flexing our spine, rounding our lower spine the tiniest bit, so we have massive engagement of our frontal abdominal musculature as well, while we are strengthening the sides. And if you have access to weights, oh boy, please do not miss this exercise. While the front side of your core musculature is responsible for flexing your spine, and the back side of your core musculature, your spinal erectors, is responsible for extending your spine, and your obliques being responsible for lateral flexion. All of these working together also do something very important, which is resisting flexion and extension. And the farmer carries or farmer walk is amazing at teaching your entire core musculature to work in conjunction to stabilize your body. And here's something you can do to make this even more effective. Number one, using a light and a heavy weight, which is going to force your core musculature to stabilize even more because of the uneven distribution of the resistance you're using. Or for an even more uneven experience, working with weight on only one side, now massively requiring your entire core musculature to keep you from starting to flex laterally. Not only is this exercise amazing because of its simplicity, but it also makes you an absolute champion at carrying home all the groceries in one single go. Something I've been told is very attractive. As usual, this video is sponsored by you. By liking this video, subscribing to the channel, watching the whole video until the end, hell, maybe even you're crazy enough to leave a comment. That is the only type of sponsorship I could ever ask for. And I will diligently use the ad money to buy even more gourmet cat food. And one of the great things about this is that we don't actually need a long range of motion to work on those. In fact, using very short, very controlled movements can also help us a lot working on the control of this musculature. Always combining the front side with the back side in a smooth motion, where even the tiniest shifts in movement and the tiniest amount of resistance can help you bulletproof your spine and strengthen all the muscles surrounding it, and also rotating sideways for a longer range of motion for our obliques, now helping us also stretch a little bit the musculature on the side, and increasing difficulty by simply extending our arms over time, which is going to require a massive amount of stabilization and a massive amount of core strength the further you move out from your body, and the stronger you become in your arms and shoulders in conjunction with the rest of your upper body musculature. And finally, I have one exercise cluster that is absolutely amazing and combine pretty much everything we did today. We're going to move into 3 different directions, starting out in complete spinal flexion, once to the left, extending our hips and our arms, moving with our left shoulder all the way down to the floor, reversing out of it into complete spinal flexion and a complete rotation to switch to the other side, bringing our shoulder all the way down, reversing out of it into complete spinal flexion, and then into complete hip extension, a classic reverse Nordic curl with a full range of motion into complete flexion, and repeating throughout the entire movement, switching from flexion to extension to a long and longer and longer range of motion. And while this does look a little bit scary, here is how you can progress through this easily. We will simply use the black magic of progressions of ranges of motion. Starting in complete flexion, hand behind the knee, extending your hip, flexing your posterior chain, lengthening your anterior chain, moving into complete flexion. And our first level is simply extending our upper body just slightly left to right, and working on being able to extend from here and lean back just the tiniest bit, tiny range of motion, before we move back into flexion again and repeat our rotations for our spine. And as you progress in strength and, importantly, flexibility, you will simply increase your range of motion, always in tiny increments, because we're not in a race. We don't have to work fast. We just want to start building the necessary foundation for those movement patterns so we can work on them properly, until we can go through a full range of motion that combines maximum amounts of anterior chain flexibility with massive amounts of anterior chain strength. And the same goes for the other side. Massive amounts of posterior chain flexibility by moving into this flexion and massive amounts of posterior chain strength by having to hold those muscles in a flexed position so we do not lose our balance. And for those of you who want to test a longer range of motion before they have the necessary strength to do so, access to a resistance band will help you do so, because there is absolutely nothing wrong in working on exercises like those with some assistance, so we can test out our progress and work a little bit more on the flexibility benefits, for instance, before we build the necessary strength to go through this entire thing all without the assistance band or resistance band. And last but not least, we can work on core strength the same way one of the most goated athletes to ever exist used to work on his core, which is the classic dragon flag. A little bit more technical, so if you want to learn how to do this step by step from beginner to all the way full dragon flag, you can check out this video where we cover the whole process. And if you like the video and subscribe. Join us, we do stuff like that very regularly, which means I'll probably see you very soon. So until then, have a good one. Captain Cairo. Peace out.